Well, I think it's going to be an awful good football game. I think both teams are. I think the talent level is fairly equal. Both teams have a lot of incentives to play for. They've won 4 games in a row. We've won 4 out of the last 5. I think it's going to be an awful good football game.
Coach, when you look at what they're doing up there, how similar is that to what Coach Carragher was doing at USD? Because I'm sure you guys are familiar with what he was doing here.
I'm not familiar with what scheme-wise he was doing at USD.
Oh, it's not like you guys chatted. I guess he said you guys.
We used to talk, but we didn't talk scheme-wise. We talked about recruiting and things like that.
Okay. So then when you look at his defense, I mean, the challenges of switching from the 3-4 to the 4-3, it looked like I talked to him yesterday. He said they had some growing pains in the beginning. What do you see from their defense at this point of the season?
Well, I think you can see it from their whole team. I think early in the season, obviously, they were getting used to a different coaching staff and how they did things. They were getting used to differences on offense and defense. And they struggled early on, and they've continued to get better week in and week out, and now they're a darn good football team playing very well.
You think your guys are better suited, better prepared to play this kind of team, as opposed to the wild swings you had over the last couple of weeks in terms of schemes and things that you had to prepare for?
I think it is a product of our league that every week most every week it's dramatic swing from what you're seeing, especially on defense, what you're seeing from week to week from the different offenses in the league. And this is a dramatic swing again. I mean, we go from a wishbone team to a all-out passing team, spread team in Fresno State. Now, we had 2 weeks to make that transition. But then we went to from Fresno State to a triple option team, which is as big a switch as you can make. And now we're going to kind of a pro set team that does both, spread it out and run it at you, and that's as big a swing as you can make. So on defense, it's a huge, I guess, disadvantage. And I don't think any defense is ready for that kind of stuff. On offense, it's not quite as dramatic, because you see a scheme on defense, they're going to be a 3-4 or 4-3. They're a man pressure team or they're a zone team. On offense, it's not near as dramatic.
Since you mentioned the defensive challenges, is that fun, interesting for you to go through that kind of challenge each week, or do you have other thoughts?
No, it's both fun on the chalkboard. It's not fun on game day.
Can you take anything from the Fresno State game defensively and use it this week?
Yeah, you can when they get into their spread formations. But here lately, the last 2 games, they've run the heck out of the football. They had over 300 yards rushing against UNLV and 200 and I don't know exactly, but 250 or 260 yards rushing against Wyoming. So they're running the ball a lot better than they did early in the year. And when they weren't running the ball, they were throwing it for, I think he had 2 games over 500 yards or something, throwing the ball, 2 games in a row over 500 yards throwing it.
You guys faced fails last year. What do you see? How has he progressed this year based on what you've seen from him compared to?
Well, if you remember the game last year, like I remember the game last year, for 3 quarters we had him kind of under control, and then in the 4th quarter he completed everything he threw and brought him back and won the game. He looks more like he did in the 4th quarter, the whole game now.
Just in terms of his command of their offense now?
Well, I think they have similar things to what they did last year, but I'm sure the different offense took him a while to get used to it, because I'm sure they called formations differently. I'm sure their pass routes or pass schemes aren't exactly the same. Now he looks, early in the season he didn't look as comfortable as he does now. He looks very comfortable now.
And it looks like they have a lot of freshmen playing too. Just like, you guys have a bunch of freshmen as well that have kind of made an impact. Do you think with them it's got to do with the fact that you bring in a new coaching staff and they bring in sort of like the players that they want?
I think that last year they had a great football team. I think their record was 11-2, and I think some of those guys were probably being recruited by San Jose State before they got there, and they just continued the recruiting process. But what happens is when you have a winning record and go to bowl games and that sort of thing, you normally recruit a little bit better athlete, so they have a better chance to play as freshmen.
Is that what's happened here too?
I think we're improving our talent level through recruiting. Now, you don't really know for about 3 years if that's true.
Because I know you don't put a whole lot of stock in like preseason awards and things like that, but the fact that Izzo was added to the Velenikov award list this sort of mid-season, what does that say about him and what he's done?
That over the last 3 or 4 games has played really well and has had big-time statistics.
That's it? You think it's just like a stats contest?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and what's the status of Jeff Gordon, and is Zach Dilly going to be starting at practice?
Zach will start this week.
Is Gordon going to play at all? You think?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he'll be ready to play. He'll be ready to play whether he plays or not. That's kind of during how the game goes and what happens. You never know for sure who's going to play and who's not going to play. On defense, we know who's going to play because we alternate them all the time. On offense, in the offensive line, if the 5 offensive linemen are playing well, you'd like to keep them all in there together. But an injury could cause a substitution, or someone not playing very well could cause a substitution.
And is Largent cleared today?
He's going to practice, but I guess he's going to be limited.
How about Casey?
Yeah, he's been cleared.
Other questions for Coach?
In regards to Adam last week going for 233, is this more the Adam you were used to seeing last season as opposed to the
Yeah, he in the last game he looked a lot like he did last year. And I think the offensive line's performing a little bit better than they did early in the year too.